When someone tells a girl, "This is your limit," they believe they are protecting tradition, order, or comfort. But what they are really doing is drawing a line around her potential and calling it reality. Today, I want to tell you about a girl who looked at that line, listened to those words, felt their weight, and then made a quiet, powerful decision. She decided that limits placed on her by others would never be the limits she lived by. From that moment, her life stopped being about acceptance and started being about courage. She was told to lower her dreams before she even learned how to dream properly. Study enough, but not too much. Speak, but not too loudly. Aspire, but only within what society had already approved for her. Each warning came disguised as advice, yet each one carried the same message: do not go further. What makes her story extraordinary is not that she ignored these messages once, but that she challenged them every single day. Every time fear whispered, "Stay small," she answered with action. Every time doubt asked, "Who do you think you are?" she replied, "Someone who is trying." Her journey was not dramatic in the way movies show it. There were no instant victories, no overnight success. There were long nights of self-questioning, moments when quitting felt easier than continuing, and days when progress was invisible. But here is the hook that matters. She kept going even when no one was watching. She chose discipline over applause, effort over excuses, and growth over comfort. That quiet persistence became her rebellion. Step by step, she moved beyond the boundaries others had drawn, not with anger, but with determination. What truly transformed her life was the moment she stopped asking for permission. She realized that waiting to be approved was the same as agreeing to be limited. So she learned, she practiced, she failed, and she learned again. With every small win, her confidence grew stronger. With every setback, her resilience deepened. The girl who was once told, "This is your limit," became a woman who understood that limits are often reflections of other people's fears, not her own abilities. As a stories expert, I have seen this pattern again and again. Courage does not arrive fully formed. It is built through choices made in ordinary moments. This girl's greatest victory was not a title, a position, or recognition. It was the freedom she claimed inside herself. And when she rose, something powerful happened. Other girls watched. Other voices grew braver. Her refusal became an invitation for others to question their own limits. From the very beginning, she was gently but firmly taught where to stop. Not through harsh commands, but through repeated reminders wrapped in concern, tradition, and expectation. This is enough for a girl. This is not meant for you. This is as far as you should go. These words settled into her world long before she had the language to challenge them. Yet, even as she followed the rules, there was a quiet awareness growing inside her, a sense that these boundaries were not protecting her future, but shrinking it. That inner pull, subtle but persistent, became the first sign of her courage. She did not rebel loudly. She questioned silently, and sometimes that is where the bravest journeys begin. What makes her story powerful is not that she immediately broke free, but that she noticed the limits others treated as permanent. She observed how opportunities seemed to have different shapes depending on who you were, and how dreams were encouraged for some but rationed for others. Every time she felt the urge to aim higher, a voice around her warned her to be realistic. But another voice, quieter and stronger, kept asking, "Why not me?" That question became her anchor. It did not remove fear, but it gave her the strength to stand inside it without surrendering. As a stories expert, I have seen how courage often begins as discomfort. She felt it when she stayed curious instead of compliant, when she asked questions others avoided, and when she imagined a life that did not yet exist for her. She learned early that limits imposed by society often reveal more about its fears than her abilities. This realization did not make her fearless, it made her focused. Each moment of doubt became an invitation to understand herself better, to grow quietly, and to prepare for opportunities she had not yet been given. There were days when accepting those limits would have been easier. Resistance carried the risk of disappointment, criticism, and isolation. Yet she chose to sit with uncertainty rather than settle for a future decided by others. Step by step, she began expanding her world internally before the world around her noticed. That internal expansion mattered because it changed how she saw herself. And once a woman's self-image begins to grow, the limits placed on her start to lose their power. Her progress never arrived in a dramatic moment that demanded applause. There was no single day when the world suddenly acknowledged her effort or celebrated her courage. Instead, her growth unfolded in quiet, ordinary spaces where no one was watching closely enough to cheer. She learned early that bravery is often invisible, especially when it belongs to a woman moving forward without permission. Each small step she took felt insignificant to others, yet each one required a decision to keep going despite uncertainty, fatigue, and doubt. That is where her real strength was built, far from recognition, deep within persistence. There were mornings when motivation failed her, when confidence felt like a luxury rather than a habit. On those days, she did not wait to feel ready. She relied on discipline. She showed up when fear was loud, when mistakes from the past replayed in her mind, and when progress seemed painfully slow. As a stories expert, I have seen how this kind of consistency becomes a form of resistance. Every time she chose effort over excuses, she quietly rejected the belief that she was incapable or undeserving of more. Each failure did not weaken her, it educated her. Loneliness was an unspoken part of her journey. Walking a path few women around her had taken meant that encouragement was limited and understanding was rare. There were moments when she wondered if the cost of continuing was too high, if turning back would bring comfort and acceptance. Yet she discovered that quitting would cost her something greater, belief in herself. So she learned to find strength in solitude, to measure progress not by applause but by growth. When no one clapped, she learned to validate her own effort, and that skill became one of her greatest assets. What kept her moving forward was not the promise of immediate success, but the refusal to betray her own potential. Each time she stood back up after disappointment, she rewrote the narrative that women must stop when the journey becomes difficult. Her persistence did not just change her direction, it changed her identity. She was no longer the girl hoping for a chance. She became the woman creating one, step by determined step. The most defining shift in her journey came quietly, almost unnoticed by those around her. It was the moment she stopped waiting for approval. For years, she had been conditioned to believe that progress required permission, that confidence had to be granted by others, and that legitimacy came from being chosen. But one day, she realized something transformative. Waiting to be validated was another way of accepting limitation. As a stories expert, I have seen how this realization marks the true beginning of power for many brave women. Letting go of the need for permission did not make her fearless. It made her responsible for her own growth. She understood that if she wanted change, she had to initiate it. So she began trusting her own judgment, even when her voice trembled. Each decision she made without external approval felt uncomfortable at first, but discomfort became a sign that she was expanding beyond familiar boundaries. With every choice, she strengthened a new habit, self-belief built through action, not reassurance. Fear did not disappear, it simply lost its authority. She learned to walk alongside it rather than wait for it to leave. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" she began asking, "What will I learn?" This shift turned hesitation into movement. Doubt, once a barrier, became a checkpoint for preparation. She trained herself to respond to uncertainty with effort and curiosity, transforming emotional resistance into practical discipline. Over time, that discipline reshaped her confidence into something steady and reliable. Small victories played a powerful role in this transformation. Each step taken without approval, each risk accepted without guarantee, became evidence of her capability. She started to see herself differently, not as someone hoping to be allowed in, but as someone who belonged because she was willing to do the work. This internal change altered how others responded to her as well. When a woman stops seeking permission, the world senses her certainty and adjusts accordingly. What began as a quiet internal decision grew into visible independence. She no longer waited to be chosen, she chose herself. And in doing so, she discovered a freedom far greater than validation, the freedom to shape her path with intention, courage, and unwavering self-trust. What she did next reached far beyond her own life, even though she never set out to inspire anyone. By refusing to accept the limits placed on her, she became a living example of possibility. People began to notice not because she demanded attention, but because consistency has a way of revealing courage. As a stories expert, I have witnessed how one woman's quiet defiance can disrupt long-held assumptions and make others question what they were taught to accept. Her actions spoke before her words ever did. Other girls saw themselves in her struggle. They recognized the same doubts, the same warnings, the same invisible barriers they had been told not to challenge. When they watched her continue despite resistance, something shifted inside them. Her journey gave language to thoughts they had never dared to express. Without standing on a stage or raising her voice, she offered proof that limits are not laws. She showed that courage does not always look loud or dramatic. Sometimes it looks like showing up again after being told you do not belong. Her influence grew naturally, rooted in authenticity rather than intention. She shared her experiences honestly, including the fear, the mistakes, and the slow progress. This honesty mattered. It made her story believable and reachable. Instead of presenting success as perfection, she presented it as persistence. That transparency invited others to begin their own journeys, not with confidence, but with willingness. And willingness, once activated, can change the direction of a life. What made her impact powerful was that she never positioned herself above others. She remained grounded, reminding those watching that bravery is a practice, not a personality trait. Every time she chose courage, she normalized it for the women around her. She created space where doubt could exist without shame and ambition could exist without apology. In doing so, she challenged a deeper narrative that only exceptional women deserve to rise. Her story insisted that courage is accessible, one choice at a time. Over time, her refusal became a ripple. One woman questioned a limit. Another spoke up. Another tried again. Change did not arrive as a revolution, but as a quiet shift in belief. And that is how lasting impact is made. When one brave woman refuses to accept imposed boundaries, she does not just change her own story, she widens the path for countless others to walk forward with confidence. So as I close, I ask you this: what limit have you been told to accept? And more importantly, whose voice has been shaping that belief? Remember, the world may try to define how far you can go, but only you decide where you stop. Be the girl, the woman, the human being who refuses to accept this is your limit. Because the moment you challenge that sentence, your story truly begins.